Have you ever just wanted to take like a bite out of the earth? Now, I don't mean like eating dirt, but what about if you could eat like a earth cookie? That's what we're going to be making today. We're going to be making some space themed cookies. We're going to make an earth, moon, and galaxy themed cookie today. So to get started, make sure that you have your sugar cookies baked and your royal icing made, and let's get into it. Here's the supplies you're going to need. For this time around, because we're working with such deep, dark colors, colors like black and blue and a dark green and purple, I recommend making your royal icing first and mixing your colors before you decorate your cookies. This is because when you mix your colors together, the darker colors can take a while to develop. I have had many a dark cookie, red, dark blue, even black cookies. Black cookies are scary to make. And they're scary because when you're mixing your royal icing together to try and get your desired color, you'll think, I'm just gonna add a little bit more and a little bit more, and suddenly you've used like half a container of black, and when you take a bite of your cookie, your whole mouth is black. We're gonna try and avoid that today. So let's go ahead and mix our colors together, and I will tell you, we're gonna do this in a few different stages because we're gonna reuse some of the colors that we make. So to start, we're going to make blue and green for our earth. We're gonna make a gray with the black, and then we're gonna put together a yellow and a purple, and we want a little bit of white. So grab all the bowls you have in your house and let's get mixing. You're going to start by dividing your royal icing into 6 different bowls. Now the 3 blue bowls at the bottom are not going to need very much royal icing, and then one of the bowls is going to need a fair bit more than the rest. And so that's the white one. We're going to be making gray. I'm adding some black food coloring and a little bit of water because I find it helps mix the color better into the royal icing. And I'm just mixing, making sure that I'm getting all of the white mixed in, and then I'm going for the right consistency. I want this to be a 20-second flood or a 20-second icing. 20 seconds means that when I swirl it, it's going to kind of fall off my spatula, kind of like Elmer's glue, or if I run my spatula through it, it takes about 20 seconds for it to settle. This is a little thick, so I'm adding a little bit more water, and it's getting a little bit better, a little bit more water, mix, and I will say that my color is a little dark. So go light on that black food coloring to start with. You can always add more, you can't take it away. It's runny, it is flowing back together pretty well, but I want it to be a little runnier. So I'm gonna add a little bit more water to this, mix it all together, and see if we have that Elmer's glue like consistency falling off my spatula. I'm just doing this in real time right now. Didn't want to speed it up too much here at the end. You can see how that's flowing together. It's a really nice consistency all together. It's not too runny, but it is runny enough to kind of flood and even out. Next, we're going to move on to the green. I am combining yellow and blue, just 1 drop of each. I'm finding it's a little too blue for my taste, so I'm going to add a little bit more yellow. So it's going to be 2 drops of yellow to every blue for my green. It looks a lot greener in this video, I'm not going to lie. But in real life, it was looking a little blue, especially because I'm mixing it in a green bowl. It really shines which way my color's going. I'm not getting as dark as I'm hoping for, so I'm just adding a little bit more food coloring a little bit at a time, adding a little bit water in with that. Next, we're moving on to the blue. I, again, want this pretty deep, dark color, but I'm also going to give it a little bit of time to develop, so I don't want to add too much color to it. And I'm just going to try and get the right consistency. Again, that Elmer's glue-like consistency for this blue and green is what we're going for. And you can see it's a little bit runny. I'm liking it. Let's see how the consistency is going. You can literally count out 1, 2, 3, and see if it's settling. You can see I jostled a little bit, settled perfectly. Blue's good to go. Moving on to the yellow, we need this runnier. So instead of a 20 or even a 15-second icing, which are both acceptable for what we're wanting to do with our black, well, our gray and our blue and our green, we want this to be more of a 10 or an 8-second icing. So if I'm running my spatula through it, it's going to take 8 to 10 seconds to settle. And this is definitely doing that. And by settle, I mean it all evens out. My yellow's good. Now we're going for purple. I'm combining blue and red, very blue, and I added quite a bit of water at the beginning, and I might have spilled. That is okay, it happens. Definitely adding some more red to this. And we're not expecting it to be incredibly purple right at the start, but we want to get close to that purple color because this purple is going to develop like our gray, black, our blue, our green. All of these colors are going to develop, but the consistency is really hitting the mark. The color will get there. Last, we have white. We're not adding any food coloring to it. We're just looking to get that 8 to 10 second consistency because we're going to be using this for our nebulas. So mixing, mixing, mixing. It's definitely runnier than Elmer's glue. Perfect. You've mixed all your colors. Now comes the patience part of it all. We are going to cover these with some wet paper towels and let them sit and develop. If you are like me and you overmixed your black or your gray, because that's what we were going for, if you want to make more, you are certainly welcome to. If it's just this dark, it's okay, it can be this dark. But as we wait for these to cover, make sure to go and bake your cookies. If you already baked your cookies because you were just ahead of the game, what you can do is instead of covering your black, we can go straight into decorating our moon. And so I'll show you that after we decorate these. After we cover these. So what I'm gonna do is I have some wet paper towels and I got a little bit of blue food dye on them and I'm not gonna worry about it. And what I'm gonna do is take out my spatula from each individual one, and I'm just going to drape this wet paper towel over the entire thing. And what you can do is take a little bit of this spatula and just put a little dot of what that color looks like. So on here you can see I just have a tiny little dot on this cup. And the reason we want to use wet paper towels is because we want to keep the moisture into these while the color develops. And we're not just bagging them and let the color develop because we might want to add more color. For example, this blue is a little light. Will it work? Yes, it will. We're not that serious. We just want them to look good. And we want them to be a little accurate. So we're gonna see how this color develops. After I cover it, I'm just gonna set it to the side and we're gonna give it 30 minutes. So let me repeat with all of these. Next, I'm gonna do the green, wiping the spatula off. And then I'm gonna cover it with a wet paper towel and just wipe a little bit of that color on there. And then I'm setting aside all of my spatulas. And I'm trying not to get food coloring everywhere. So now we got the green. The green is honestly probably fine. Now what I could do with this white, because we don't care about this color developing, is I can bag this right now. Same with the gold. I don't care about this color developing, the gold yellow. And the purple, we already know it's gonna develop. I put, what, like 6 drops of color in it. So I'm not concerned about these. I'm gonna go straight into bagging these. And then if you want your gray to develop more because you weren't, you know, a little crazy on the food coloring, then you want to cover this gray and do the same thing like you're doing with the green and the blue. Now, if you're happy with how all of your colors are, maybe you overdid it on the food coloring, totally easy to do, we all do it, just go ahead and bag your food coloring or your royal icing. And let's get over to bagging some of these and then we'll jump right into decorating our moons to get started. Before we can start icing, we need to get our gray, or in my case, very dark gray, icing into our icing bag. I like to take a glass and then open up my piping bag and stick it in the glass. And this allows me to use 2 hands using my spatula and holding my bowl to get all of that icing in there. And I'm using some silicone bowls that can help funnel that icing in a little bit
better. Once I get all of that icing put into that piping bag, I can also use the edge of the cup to help scrape my spatula so I'm getting as much of that icing as possible into the piping bag. And then I'm going to grab both the sides and it'll kind of sink down so I'm getting that icing as far into that piping bag as possible. And then I'm going to spin it in one hand so I can get a really tight end to tie a knot in. Now, I'm no knot master. I can't tell you what type of knot this is, but I'm making a knot with itself. And I'm just pulling that through, making sure that I get the entire end, the entire open end of that piping bag through that knot or through that loop that I made. And so I might be pulling a couple of pieces out, and there we go. Next up, you're going to fill your piping bags with the yellow, gold, the purple, and the white icing. And so I'm just going to show you one. I'm just going to do the yellow here. It's very easy. It's a very thin icing. I will say I'm using a slightly smaller piping bag. That is not necessary for you to do. I'm just trying to get all of this icing into that bag, again using the cup, and then I'm going to scrape my spatula on the side of the cup directly into that piping bag. And once I'm done setting that aside, I do have some icing on my thumb, so I'm really trying to not get it on the outside of my piping bag, which is why I'm kind of holding this piping bag oddly. I'm holding it oddly between my hands so I don't get yellow royal icing all on the outside of this piping bag. But I'm going to do the same thing, twisting the bag, making a knot, and pulling through the ends so that they are sealed.
The first cookie we're going to work on today is our moon cookie. It is going to be your simplest, but it is somehow going to take the most amount of time. And that is because what we're going to do with this cookie is just something that makes our cookies really kind of stand out, but in a very incredibly simple way. And what's going to do that is this right here. These are just cut up squares of parchment paper. I actually cut them for a different cookie project and I cut about 1,000 too many. So I saved them to use them later. And what you can do is you can, I wouldn't reuse the parchment paper that you utilize to bake your cookies or to roll out your cookies on because there's a lot of grease on it and we don't want to have that grease interfere with our royal icing. So take a few sheets of parchment paper or like roll out a little bit and cut them into squares that kind of are the size of your cookie. So if I put this over, that covers my whole cookie. And you can decide how many moons you want to create. You can pull out 1/3 of these cookies that you want to turn into moons. You could pull out just 4 and set up your station. So I have a little piece of parchment paper to decorate on. I also have my scribe. You can pull out a toothpick for this, or if you want to get a scribe, you can find the link to this down below. I also have a little decorating platform that I decorate on. This is not necessary at all for these cookies, but it can be helpful if you struggle to grab your cookies and move them without getting your fingers on them. It can be helpful to utilize this little container to kind of nudge them off using your scribe onto your hand, and then you can place them onto your cookie rack to dry. So not necessary, but again, you can find this linked down below. And you want to get your gray. Now my gray is looking more and more black. We're going to ignore that fact. These cookies are going to look good. They're going to taste good. It's not gonna matter if they're not quite the right color. I hope yours is a little bit more gray and less black. And what we're gonna do is we are literally just going to, I'm not gonna show you right here, I'll have a different view for this, but we're literally just going to pipe the whole thing black. And we're not even gonna worry about it being too even, because what we're gonna do is take this parchment paper and lay it right on top and kind of just tap it down. And the reason I say these are the simplest cookies, but they'll take the longest to do, not because there's a lot of work for you to do, but because there's a lot of drying. We want this cookie to look kind of matte, matte gray. We don't want to have that shine or gloss on it, and so that's what this parchment paper is going to do. We are going to let the royal icing dry with the parchment paper on it, and we're going to pull it off when we're done. So these cookies will probably take you somewhere around 4 hours. I'll put the correct time above me. Let's just say that. So let's get decorating. Pull out how many cookies you want to decorate, and don't try and use all of your gray food coloring, because we're going to actually use this for our galaxy cookies as well. So that's why we made so much of this, because we're going to use more of it on 2 of our cookies. So let's get decorating.
You're going to start by grabbing a cookie, and you're just going to pipe a line circle all around the edge of your cookie. You don't have to worry about getting too close to the edge. And then once you have that full circle, non-broken line, you're going to start filling in, not too carelessly, but not too carefully, with the rest of your gray or close to black royal icing. Once that's all done, you're going to take your scribe and you're just kind of make sure that you're getting your icing kind of all the way to that line. Honestly, this step is not even that necessary for these moon cookies because of what the parchment paper is going to be doing for us. But and kind of make sure that you have enough icing on your cookie. Next, you grab your piece of parchment paper and just place it on top. I actually wish that I hadn't pressed down so much on this parchment paper. You can see I have a couple of air bubbles. I wish I had more. So air bubbles are your friend.
We have made our moons. We're not gonna knock them off our cookie sheet. They're covered in their parchment paper. We're gonna let those sit. Next thing we're gonna wanna do is take our gray, probably not as dark as this, icing, and we're gonna wanna find a circular or some sort of dish. Because what we're gonna do for our galaxy or nebula cookies is we're going to dip them into some really thin icing. So we've been making a 20-second icing. We're gonna make an 8 or a 10-second icing like we did for these little guys out of our gray color, and we're actually going to make it more black. So we got a little bit of work to do, and then we'll move on to our earth cookies. So I recommend grabbing a cookie and maybe a couple of different dishes that you think might work, or you might have one precisely in mind after I show you my trick for finding the right cookie dish. So what I do is, depending on my cookie size, so we're obviously doing a circle, I want to find a dish that I can utilize as much of my royal icing as possible. So I don't want it to be too wide, but I also don't want it to be too small. So I have an example. I have this little one. Wouldn't this be perfect for dipping cookies in? Except my fingers don't really fit inside, so I'm gonna drop the cookie. So this one's ruled out. Now, this is one I usually go to. It's very shallow, so I'm not spreading out too much, but it's a little wide. Look how small the cookie is in comparison to that Tupperware. So I don't think this one's a good option either. But I have this circle one. Does it have to be a circle? No, it does not. While it is thick, it allows me, well, thick, that's not the right word. While it is deep, it allows me the space to have my fingers on each side of my cookie so I can dip it in to whatever I have down here. And what makes this bowl even better is it is graduated, so it's bigger on top and smaller on bottom, so I can really get as much of my icing out of here as possible. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I need to get not quite a bit, I need to get all of the icing out of here. So instead of just slowly getting all the icing in, what I'm gonna do is just cut off a big chunk at the end. I was trying to get a whole bunch of icing out of the way so I didn't lose any, and I'm just gonna squeeze it all out. And the reason we did the moons first is because we need to use the rest of this icing to make our black. And just like we're doing with the red and the blue, we need this color to develop. And I got some icing on the outside of this, and I'm trying not to get it on my hands, and I think I'm just gonna have to suck it up. Once we have all of your gray royal icing in here, what we're gonna wanna do is add maybe a drop or 2 of black. It really depends on how dark your color is. My color is very dark, so I'm only gonna do a drop or 2 of black, and then we wanna thin this out. So let me see, 1, 2, okay, 3, 4. Those last ones weren't as big, so we're not gonna count them. And I'm gonna put about half a tablespoon of water in here. And I have a clean spatula. There we go. And I'm just gonna mix this in. And just like we did with our, not our red, our green and our blue icings, we are gonna cover this with a wet paper towel to develop further. We just kind of want to make sure it's mixed in here as much as possible. This definitely took it darker. And we might come back and say like, oh, it's not quite dark enough, and that is okay. It's really difficult to get black royal icing. It's difficult to get any of these rich dark colors. I'm gonna do like 2 more drops. I'm just really gonna make sure that anyone who eats these has a black mouth at the end. That's just what we're gonna be dealing with here. And that's okay. The cookies will taste good and you'll know everyone who had one. No one can get away with sneaking a cookie and saying they didn't eat one because the evidence will be right there on their face. Okay, I think this one's definitely doing better now. And so I'm gonna go grab a wet paper towel, put it on top, and just like we did with the green and the blue, I'm just gonna do like a little dollop of this color on top so I can see what it is developing into. It's been about an hour of our color developing in this green and this blue. I can't say that I feel like it's developed a whole lot. Can you tell the difference between those? I think it's probably a little bit deeper in color, but we're gonna move on. I will say I didn't think the blue really developed at all, so I added 1 more drop of blue to it, and I'm happy. I can have a vibrant earth. It's fine with me. So what I'm gonna do is bag these colors up. I like to use a cup, as you've already seen me do with the other ones, but this is a slightly different angle this time. So I take my piping bag, I try and make sure I don't get too much dog hair in it. This is why I do not sell cookies. And I'm gonna fold that piping bag over. It just makes it easier to be able to have 2 hands and not have to hold your piping bag. So I'm just gonna pour this green in, and because we're making such a nice flowy consistency of icing, it should be pretty easy for us to get this into our bag. And there's like a couple of things I'm trying to get in there. I'm gonna scrape this off. Let's see, let me see if I can do a comparison between the color we started with and what we ended up with. I don't know, those kind of look the same to me. I swear this happens every time. I'm like, I'm gonna develop my colors, and then my colors are like, I'm gonna look the same. So hopefully you have better luck at home. And then I'm gonna pull this out, twist the top, and tie it into a knot. Putting my cup aside, and I don't know how I have dog hair everywhere, but I do. So I'm just trying to get that off. I'm just twisting with one hand, kind of working my way up the other side. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Okay, and then I'm just tying, I don't know the names of my knots, so if you know what this type of knot is, please let me know so I can say it. There we go. Now it's completely closed. I have not cut the tip yet, and the entire top of the bag is through the knot, so I can kind of go crazy with it. Let's repeat with the blue, so I'm going to take that paper towel off. I'm just going to show you I added a drop of food coloring. I also used my black spatula to mix it. I think those look relatively the same. What do you think? But let's bag up the blue. Shoot, why did I put that in with the green? We're not going to worry about it. Not going to worry about it at all. Get that in our cup, and let's pour this blue in. I really like using these silicone bowls because you can kind of squish it so you don't get your icing everywhere. You can really funnel it in without having to use a funnel. And the other plus side about using royal icing is you just soak this stuff in water. It comes right off, and then you can just soap and water it, or if you have a dishwasher, you can just use that. I haven't had a dishwasher in 7 years, so washing it by hand in this house. Let's pull it out, put our cup aside, twist. If you ever find that you have filled your bags too full, we have all been there, you can get like a chip clip. I have a whole bunch from IKEA that are small and you can just put those on the end. Or if you have really too much, you can put it in 2 different bags. How did I get a hair in this? This time it's my own hair and I can't blame it on the dog. Okay. Just making that tight. Let's check to make sure we got the whole, seriously, where's all this hair coming from? The whole top in, we can see the whole top from one end to the other. So we know that this is tight and sealed and these are our earth colors. So let's get decorating.
First thing we need to do before we start decorating cookies is make sure that we cut the tip of our tipless icing bags. You can see I'm just cutting a little bit. I'm going to do a test line. You can always cut more. You cannot cut less. So start small and cut bigger. I am making sure that I have the edge, the seam on one side, and then I am taking a little bit off right on that edge. I'm going to try and do the same amount on both sides, a little test strip, and these are good to decorate. Now I've grabbed a cookie and I'm going to start by again just doing a full circle with the blue on the outside of my cookie. This is going to be the line that I don't want any of my icing to run out of. Next, I'm just going to freehand what I think the Earth looks like from outer space. So I'm coming in with Africa because Africa is a huge continent. Honestly, it just seems like the forefront in my mind. And I did look up what Earth looks like from outer space with the perspective of Africa being front and center. This is the image of that from my brain. It's not that fantastic. After you have your land lines, we're just going to fill in the ocean with the blue. This is very similar to coloring. We want to make sure we stay in our lines and make sure that you're not filling in anywhere where there should be land, like I accidentally did for Madagascar. It's okay, we can fix it. We're not going to be too careful about adding in all of the blue at once and filling in the kind of divots that you're seeing in this cookie because we're going to grab our scribe, kind of swoosh some things around. And again, we can always come back with more blue, but we want to fill in the rest of the cookie with our green before we come back with more blue. So now we're grabbing the green and we're going to fill in the land pieces. I'm starting with South America and just squirting some land in there. And then we're going to fill in with our Europe, and I think that's a little bit of Asia peeking out. My geography is really shining through, and we're filling in with Africa. You can see I am adding so much green that it's actually expanding the land area, especially down there, Madagascar. And I'm going to come back with my scribe and kind of help my land take a little bit more space because I let the ocean really take over here. And I had to grab my cookie to steady it. Totally fine. We're just going to make sure we're not grabbing anywhere near that line, that demarcation line, where icing is not supposed to overflow. You can also kind of stab your cookie and shake it, and you can see it evens out. That's that 15-second, 20-second icing doing its job. Now, if I want to I'm adding a little bit of, ocean between my Madagascar and Africa, and I'm just kind of pushing the blue with my scribe so that I can get that ocean in there without trying to put in my own ocean. And I'm filling in a little bit of blue. I kind of expanded the green a little bit in there. We're just making a little bit of perfections, evening out our abstractish earths and getting a kind of a good look between land and ocean. You don't have to make a realistic earth. You can make whatever earth-like cookie you want here. And when it's all done, you can perfect things a little bit, maybe add a little bit more blue where you see that divot by Europe, but give it a little shake, your cookie's good to go.
Once you've made your earth cookies, you will have all of your other, leftover green and blue icing, as well as your purple, your yellow, and your white. If you notice, the purple has developed. This is definitely a lot darker than when we started. I have cut the tips off of mine already so that these are ready to go. Now, if you are in need of more dark black icing, you can actually take some of your green and blue, mix it in, add any food coloring that you need so that you have enough icing to dip in. And now what we're gonna do, we have this nice and thin. I'm actually gonna use my scribe real fast. It's very thin icing. Now what we're gonna do is take some of our food coloring and we're just gonna some of our other royal icing colors and we're just gonna swirl them in and we're gonna dip our cookie. Now, you might want to cut your tips of your white and your yellow very, very small. Same with your purple, just so that if you want to, you can add a couple of dots for stars or anything after you've dipped. And let's see what this looks like. I also have another dedicated cookie rack just to put these on. Sometimes you might want to put a piece of parchment paper underneath because sometimes when you dip cookies, they can kind of the icing can kind of fall off. So you can be a little prepared in case that happens to the best of us, but we'll talk through how you can avoid that and how you can just have some really cool looking galaxy nebula cookies. What I'm gonna do is start with my blue and I'm just gonna kind of twirling at the end because I'm putting a lot of pressure. I'm just gonna put some drops in there. You can kind of play around with how much color you have. So we got some blue, let's get some green. Again, it's twirling at the end because I'm putting a lot of pressure. I don't want nearly as much green as I do blue. And I'm gonna get some purple in there. This is a lot thinner, so it's gonna cooperate better. And then I'm gonna do some yellow. And I'm actually gonna save the white for after. Maybe I'll change my mind after this cookie. Next, I'm going to take a cookie. If you've been making them thinner, you're gonna want thicker ones for this. But if you've been doing, I always forget the sizes, but the size I recommend in the recipe, you can do a little bit thicker or this size. You just want to have the ends so your fingers aren't sticking off the ends. So if you look down here, my fingers are sticking off the end. I'm going to just dip it in, trying to, swirling around to make sure I get all the colors in there. And then pull it out. And I have quite a few swirls. Now I'm gonna set aside my food coloring and I'm actually gonna come in with the white. I'm just gonna do a couple of dots. I'm gonna come in with my scribe and I'm just gonna pull out, being careful to wipe off my scribe every time so I can get a little star shape. Cute. Now you can certainly do more than 4 sides. I'm just gonna do 4. I really should have only done like 3 on this one, but here we are. And I'm wiping my scribe every single time because I don't want to get my white all mixed in with these other colors. I want my white to stand out. You can see right here, I got a little too much. I went a little too deep. Let's wipe that away. And I got 2 more. I could also make some of these look like planets. Do that on this last one, where I just pull it out through 2 sides. You can see I got a little bit too much in here. See if I can just mix the white in. quite. So, and if I want to come in and kind of fix any of these, make these look a little different, I can do kind of the same movements. And if I find any air bubbles, I can pop them. The air bubbles don't bother me as much as some other people I've seen. But it just makes your cookie look a little nicer. So again, you want to be careful not to touch the sides too much. And you're going to go set it down. And we repeat. Kind of want to do a lot of color in the middle. And you're really just playing around. You're not going to be able to dictate what your cookie looks like too much. So let's go crazy. You could do splotches. I'm going to do a little bit of white in this one. And you can tell I'm not taking this too seriously. I'm going to dip my cookie in, kind of swash it around. And then you can kind of pull it out different ways. Okay, this one was kind of a fail. It's just black. So what I could do is come up on the top. I can take my white and just swirl it right along in here. And we're just having fun with it. I'm gonna come in with my yellow as well and just do it right next to this cookie, or right next to this line. And I'm not gonna worry about it if it kind of drops off at all. I'm gonna do the same with my purple. I'm gonna come in a slightly different area. And I'm gonna do the same with my blue. Now my blue's a slightly different consistency. We did that 20-second on the blue instead of the 10. Whoopsie. We're gonna make it work. Okay, then we're gonna come in with our scribe. And we're just gonna twist it. We're doing whatever we want here. This is called a marbling technique when you do it on, cakes or brownies, you're marbling. Just creating some fun little nebulas. And if you want to come back in and do a couple of stars, I'm just going to do 3 this time because I think I went a little overboard last time. I'm going to pull it out, wipe off my scribe, pull it out, wipe off my scribe, pull it out, wipe off my scribe, and pull it out. And you can see I got a little black in there. We're not gonna worry about it. Okay, let's do it again on this one. What I love about these nebula cookies is they look super cool. They look like you've spent hours working on them. And besides the moon cookies, they are one of the easiest ones you could do. You could also make them look like other planets. If we did like a whole bunch of red and orange, we could do a dip cookie and make it look like Mars. I can see I have a little air bubble in there. Okay. And there we go. And I have a little bit of spillage on the side. I'm just gonna wipe that off with my scribe. And then go, this is the dangerous part. I don't wanna touch it. And there's my cookie. Okay, let me do one more. Okay, this time I'm just gonna swirl everything. Everything's just gonna be a swirl around the outside. Swirl, 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 swirl. And this is why you don't need too much of these other colors, especially this white and the yellow and the purple, because you're not actually using too much of them. I'm gonna come back with the purple. It's almost look like Mardi Gras cookies. Okay, and we're gonna dip our cookie in. I'm kind of swirling a little bit in here. Ooh, this ended up being a very white cookie. Very white cookie. So what I'm gonna do, I'm actually just gonna dip it again, but I'm gonna come in with my scribe, kind of mix all these colors in, and see what happens. We're just gonna go in and dip it again. Because I want some of these other colors in here. I don't want it to just be black. That turned out a little bit better. So again, I'm gonna put this to the side. If I wanted to come through, maybe I want to do like a streak of blue in here, which I'm gonna. almost make it look like someone's rocket ship, huh? And I'm just making sure my scribe's all cleaned off. Just gonna kind of go along this line that I put in here and twirl it in, make it look a little bit more natural. And then I could come in and do a couple more stars. 1, 2, 3. Again, making sure my scribe is clean. I don't want any black in these stars. And I'm just gonna pull them out. And keep doing this. And if at any point I feel like there's too much black in a star, what I can do is come back with my white and just put another drop in. Because I'm pulling out this drop, so I definitely have the room to put a little bit more white in this if I need to. The other thing I can do is kind of mix it around inside. So I'll try that first, see if I can get the black out. I really can't, it's a very dark color. So I'm just gonna put a little drop of white in the middle there. And that teeny bit, I'm just gonna pull from, see if I can kind of push it out. Cool, that one cleaned up nicely, and this one I'm gonna push it out, get out of here. You're ruining our aesthetic. And if I feel like my stars have gotten a little too deep, I can pull the sides in. We're having fun with it. We're not being too serious about space. Because we're doing this to take a bite out of Earth, right? And there we go, we got one last cookie. And you can play around with it and see what fun designs you create. While we let our cookies dry, I suggest going and cleaning up. We mixed a lot of different colors today. You probably have some leftover icing from doing all of your galaxy cookies, and so plus side of using disposable is you can just toss these. But if you're saying, I have a lot of colors left over and I kind of feel bad throwing them away, you can actually put these into new sealed bags. The ends are all cut off, right? You can put these into new piping bags, and I like to write on them the date that I made them and what kind of consistency they are. So these are different floods or 20-second, and you could write 10-second on these if you wanted to, and pop them in your freezer. And if you use them within a couple of months, then you have some great icing. And if you don't use them in a couple of months, I recommend tossing them then. But let's let these dry, clean up a little bit, and we'll come back when they're all done. All right, it has been a few hours. I'm not gonna lie, I let my cookies dry overnight. But after about 8 hours, you should be good removing the parchment paper off of your moons. And this is what they're gonna look like. They look so cool. Takes a long time, but very little effort. So let's peel off the tops and see what this is gonna look like on the rest of them. So grab your cookie, you can grab the top of it. It's not gonna hurt anything. The parchment might already be peeling away a little bit. Place it in whatever space you're using to decorate cookies and just peel the parchment off. You can see there's a little color on here, but the cookie looks great. And so we definitely want to get some air bubbles in here. That's how we make the craters of our moon. And let's do one last cookie. Peels right off again. And there's our moons. And just like that, you have your space-themed cookies and can honestly take a bite out of Earth. Once you've baked and decorated your cookies, be sure to tag Iced.Kitchen so that I can see what your cookies look like. And if they don't look like mine, that is okay. The whole point of Iced.Kitchen and decorating these cookies is to have fun with it and bring a little artistic flavor into your kitchen. So again, this month we made some moons, we made some abstract looking earths, and we made some galaxies, nebulas, black holes. So you can share these with your kids, with your neighbors, or just savor them all for yourselves. Be sure to subscribe to Iced.Kitchen so that you can get all of the fun cookie decorating videos to support your new hobby. And if you haven't yet signed up to receive the step-by-step instructions alongside this video to decorate these cookies, be sure to subscribe in the link below.